We are
Didi
and Arma, and in our daily lives we support people on the path of self-liberation. We teach time-tested energy skills like Qigong, Tai Chi, internal alchemy, traditional nutrition and meditation.
We help people release stagnation, build energy, and become aligned with themselves and their purpose in life.
In this podcast, we share the methods, skills, and solutions that helped us, our students, and now hopefully you move forward.
Let's explore transformation together.
Welcome to the podcast, and today we're talking about transformation again, as we're always doing, I guess. So it might bore you, but today we want to look at introspection. Knowing yourself, awareness in different ways, how we approach them. Of course, we have our separate, you could say, expertises and our joint expertises. But I think, Didi, and that transformation is not possible without actually knowing yourself.
No,
Understanding yourself.
You need to be aware first and then...
Yeah.
Because if you're not aware, how can you change something?
How can you change? Yeah, I mean, it sounds so simple, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually not that simple for most people.
No.
Why? We have so much unconscious behavior.
Absolutely.
It just goes and goes. And we have all these patterns that we develop throughout our lives. And we create these personalities and how we deal with situations, And a lot of that goes on whisper level, you could say. We don't even notice it until we start, questioning and putting a sort of microscope on it. Huh?
I heard, just to know about awareness and how patterns can just come into your life. I heard this story the other day. It was so funny. It was actually about cooking, and that this woman, she said, I have this recipe from my grandmother about making, I'm not sure how you call this in English, but like a meat that...
Meatloaf or meat?
That's bound in these...
in a net, you could say. Yeah.
And she had the perfect recipe for it from her grandmother. And her mother always cooked it the same way. And it involved taking off the sides, the ends of this piece of meat. And she always really liked it. But after cooking it for decades, she came to her grandmother and she said, "So, grandmother, what's the use actually of taking these bits off?
Why are we cutting it? And
why does it make the meat so much better?" And then her grandmother said, "No, it's just because otherwise it couldn't fit into my oven."
Wow.
So it was just this very, it started to become something like the magic touch.
Yeah, but it was just...
It was just pure practical. And I think sometimes this is what it is with patterns, with behavior. We
Absolutely.
have no idea where it comes from. It's something that started maybe not even in your life, but in, your grandmother's life.
Yeah.
This is a silly example, of course, but...
but
it shows.
It does show, and it's all these things that you pick up throughout your life. Yeah. If we're talking about this life, right?
Yeah.
And you don't really question.
No.
Right?
No,
and then there's also the things that we experience, right?
Yeah.
And some things are very nice and some things are not nice at all. And then, of course, there's a sort of a defense mechanism that sets in.
Yeah.
It has a sort of a memory, you could say, and says, okay, I don't want to have that experience anymore. So unconsciously, you're going to get behaviors that are going to avoid certain things, right? So you could be in a classroom and you're young and you're pointing up your finger. You have a question, right? You think you have a good question. And you raise your finger and your teacher starts ridiculing you, right? About your question. Things like that can happen, right? So, and everyone's laughing and you're like, I'm not going to put up my finger anymore, right? This is also a silly example, but we can all relate to situations like that where we start to protect ourselves because we, in the end, we want to feel safe and we want to feel part of a community. And but it's hard when unconscious behavior is all around you when you grow up and you start picking up these patterns as well. Of course, from your parents, from your family, friends, family of friends. I mean, when you grow up, that circle becomes larger, right? You get a job, you get colleagues, you get in a certain culture. This culture starts dictating your behaviors and how you dress, and so we start creating these personalities, right?
Yeah.
And these personalities is really what we want to, we want to see them.
Yeah.
We really want to get to know ourselves. A lot of people say, yeah, but that's who I am.
Yeah.
But is that so? Isn't that just how you behave?
Yeah.
Is it who you are, or is that how you just unconsciously start behaving?
Exactly. That's also something that when you introduce yourself, who are you? Are you your job? Are you the things that you do? Or are you your name? Who are you? That's a good question.
Absolutely. So when introspection comes in, so in hermetics we have this exercise called the black and the white mirror, where we really go deep and want to understand our souls. So this is on the astral level, right? And so the astral body is how you experience everything through feelings. But it also has a memory, right? It has an astral ego, as you could say. So we were talking about this protection, and so it also has it wants to protect you from certain feelings, having certain feelings, right? You had a misfortunate experience with something, and then it starts protecting yourself. But it also you could say in these behaviors there are certain things and weaknesses, right? That express themselves throughout your life. And so if we talk about a black and a white mirror, we could say on the black side, there's these weaknesses that we have, right? And certain weakness could be like anger, inconsistency, jealousy, fear. Fear. Like, okay, you're contracting yourself too much, or you're getting yourself out of the equation. You might be someone who's so rational and always starts discussing with people about more than the other person. There's all these protective behaviors that we really want to have in check if we want to transform. Because if you consider those patterns as normal, then that's still much too unconscious. But if we want to transform, and of course the people who are listening now, I'm pretty sure that they're at the level that they understand that it all starts by themselves, right? It starts with you.
Yeah.
If you want to change, if you want to change your circumstance, you have to start with yourself.
Yeah.
So the black mirror is really checking and making a list of these weaknesses, you could say, starting there. And the funny thing is, when I started, it was like, I was reading this book, about the initiation into hermetics. It's in there. It's really step one of astral training. So. And then my teacher had told me, so it was like, some people would, write down like hundreds of things.
Yeah.
And like hundreds of weaknesses.
You don't have any.
Of course not, right? So, but then I said, okay, I decided on 2 weeks with that, right? I had something I could make notes on, journal. And at first I was like, I realized I can get angry sometimes, and I have some of these inconsistencies and stuff like that. And I started writing, and then writing some more, and then at the end of these 2 weeks, I had a couple of hundred things. I did, right? And I was so surprised that at certain points I started writing, and I found myself writing more and more and more. And I was like, I was sort of, by going deep in, it was almost like I was sort of awakening something that just wanted to let go and come to the surface. So it was like a ball that started rolling faster and faster and became bigger and bigger. And it was a pretty rough process, I must say. These 2 weeks are, you have to sort of limit yourself, because it's, you have to be very honest with yourself. As we say in Holland, you have to sort of pull up the tile and look what's under, right? And you have to go into your past and things like that. And it's not easy, but in these hundreds of things, they were not that different, right? That you can see overlaps. You can see certain. So I could bring it back to categories, you could say.
Yeah.
Things that, I mean, how does anger express itself, right? And how does, inconsistency express itself in different ways and different things in your life? And then when you go into it, it's like, okay, but where does this, you always have to ask, okay, so now I know that, now I see that, but what's underneath it? So if someone would say, I am too lazy, this person is too lazy, it's never laziness. It's probably, a lack of self-worth, or it's, things like that.
Yeah.
And out of balance in the earth element where you just, So it's always, so you have these categories. And then in these categories, you're going to ask yourself these questions. Yeah, okay, but now what? Right? It's more like it expresses itself more like an external problem. Now what's internally, what's the internal problem? What's underneath? And just keep asking, okay, and then there's maybe 2 or 3 things that you're left with, which are really like, okay, this is what I really can work on. Because of course, that's the next step, right? After introspection, you see these things. Now, well, of course, you also make a notation, a list of your strengths.
Yeah.
Because we all have strengths, right?
Absolutely.
We have talents, we have things that come easy to us. But also there we have to look, all these things are sort of double-edged.
Yeah.
Even strengths can be like that, right? Because you can have, you can be the person that's very consistent with everything, but you could be very consistent with being angry or frustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you can see how these feed towards each other. They feed on each other. Is that the correct English? I hope so. But I hope you understand what I mean. They can amplify each other, you could say. So the whole thing is that we have these categories and then we can see, okay, so what are now ways that we can approach this and work with this and change the energy? Because it really is energy that's stuck.
Yeah.
Right? It's the behaviors that repeat themselves is just stuck energy.
Yeah. So when you did because you did the black mirror, you
did the white mirror, yeah.
And then you did the white mirror, you also did 2 weeks of white mirror.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah, well, roughly. I mean,
Roughly.
It wasn't, yeah.
And did you have hundreds of things on that list as well?
No,
or?
I didn't. It was more like, I think it almost was more like in the categories already, sort of that I recognized. Yeah, I'm someone who always goes deep. I've discipline, things like that.
Through the black mirror, you actually found out about your strengths as well.
They sort of amplify them as well, of course, because you have this, This is really, of course, we're making it dualistic here. We say we have black and white, but it's never like that per se, right? Because we have to understand that certain behaviors have saved us at certain times in your life, right?
There's always a connection.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you had to, with this anger, I grew up in a family where, is anger the right word? But we have these short fuses, right? We have that. Frustration. And it represents itself in anger, you could say, but it was in the family. That's how we dealt with things. And not only my family, but my uncle lived with us as well. He had that as well. We had all these short fuses. So I have to swallow when I think about it, right? That's still how, it's this is a lifetime of work, I guess. But it sometimes it would help to protect yourself.
Yeah.
To be just bang, it's like, you get this aggression can actually help at a certain point in your life. But if that becomes sort of your, your default modus for how you treat situations, but especially how you treat yourself, right? Because this anger is not, that sometimes it goes out and, does damage. Of course, but that wasn't all the time. It's more how it projects inside at a certain point, and you get angry with yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You get impatient with yourself and angry with yourself, and that's when it really starts to hurt the soul.
Yeah.
Right. So it's always this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what it does when you do like the black and the white mirror, and there's so many more tools, but this is from the Hermetics, you start to become an observer of yourself.
Perfectly said. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what you want to do.
Yeah, so, in hermetics, you have different streams where you're working on. You have like the mental stream. That's exercises building up, especially for the mental body. We have astral, right? So that's all about how we experience through feelings and things like that. And then we have a physical stream, you could say. And these three, they work together. But if we look at the mental stream, the first step in mental exercises is about observing the rising and falling away of thoughts. So that's where you start, there the word observing comes in. Yeah. This introspection thing, because we have to sort of create this gap between observer and the thing you're observing, right? In this case, your thoughts. That's where you start. Yeah. Because your subconscious can be so quiet, right? That you, if your head's underwater all the time, you're just not going to notice. But if we start getting our head above the water and start observing these patterns, thought patterns, and of course, you can the emotions that come with that, that's when the transformation can start to happen, you could say. Yeah. Right? So, and of course, then it's like, okay, we can work with energy. We're focusing on energy if we're going to Qigong, right? But this observer state is actually the spirit state. It has no judgment. It has no, it doesn't touch anything. It's more like it's just present. Yeah. So in order to transform, you have to say, what are we transforming towards? Yeah. Well, getting the spirit more into the equation, of course, this observing state more into the equation. So that's why it's so important to also go into our personality and see, okay, what's stuck there? Yeah. What's stuck there and is hurting us in our progress? Because the spirit wants to, how you say that? It wants to, get into the world. It wants to sort of, express itself. But if it's always hindered with lower aspects of our being, like, stuck in these patterns.
Stagnation.
Yeah, it seldom will come through. We won't really notice it, right? Yeah. But if we start, detaching from that, it can happen. Yeah. And it's the same with what you are doing, right? I mean, our patterns around our diet and how we take care of ourselves with our lifestyle are so connected with that.
Absolutely.
As well. So why do we choose certain foods, right? Why do we choose certain things?
Why do we live our life the way we do? That's actually, and I use 5 elements to analyze. Well, it's one of the tools, of course.
Well, hermetics also uses elements, different model a little bit, but
exactly. But you can choose from so many models. But one of the main one I use is the 5 elements. Yeah, and you go through all these aspects that you said as well. Only that this is. The model was created for also medical use. Yeah. So it goes very deep into all aspects. And so foods are related to these elements, but also patterns. Like when you say about anger, you would say, oh, that's part of the wood element. Mm-hmm. It has this very...
sort of penetrating
penetrating expanding energy, and if it doesn't have the room to expand and to rise, well, there's frustration. Then you feel like, I'm held back, and it has no way to go out. And if you put a lot of because it's more of a yang energy. If you put more yang onto it, it's gonna explode. Yeah,
and then we're going into fire energy,
and
right?
It's really going up, and you see that kind of energy before you.
Yes, when in the hermetics that would be fire element immediately. That it doesn't have the wood element, right? Yeah, and that's so nice about the 5 elements is where you see this process, right?
It's the yin yang. It's the movement of energy. Yeah, and it's related to, and the 5 elements are more kind of how do you say? It's taken apart a little bit more to see how it behaves.
So you see, and that's so beautiful about it. You see the process happening. So you see patterns happening. So if you talk about introspection, on any level, but let's say what we were talking about now, you can actually see is like, okay, which element is so out of balance here that we, we can fine tune that, but because that will always lead unconsciously to, well, the explosion, you could say, right? So, but where can we catch it before it happens?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if you want to, well, for example, with your family, you see that wood element there is a lot of fiery aspects there. Yeah.
That's on one side, right?
On one side, yeah. But the funny thing is, I'm from a different kind of family.
Oh yeah.
Where you see
opposites attract.
Yeah, exactly. Where in my family, there was never any yelling, or even if we raised our voices, it was kind of hushed down.
Like suppressed immediately.
Yeah. So every emotion, really. Oh, you could feel some, if there were some tears, maybe, but especially anger was not tolerated.
Right. Yeah.
And not that my mom said you cannot be angry, no, but
it was just in the air, right?
It was in the air, and still, if I feel like, I feel that I have anger building up in me, I feel it's this kind of judgment from the energy of my family, like, oh no, that's not somewhere we gonna go.
Right, the door's closed there.
The door's closed, and what would happen in my family, that we would walk away. That's it.
Yeah.
So there was never, but that also stopped conversations about these things.
Yeah.
So when I met you, that was interesting because now these two energies come together.
Yeah.
And what happened is that we learned from each other.
For sure.
But at first it was sometimes quite hard to see.
Well, if your head's underwater and if you think there's something wrong with the other person, right?
Yeah.
It's like, he's
always angry. But for what was angry for you was for me like, what?
Like war, like complete rage.
Right? And for you, probably you would think,
like, I'm not angry, right?
No.
But look at my face, right? I'm not. So yeah.
So that's patterns, but because we met each other, we could discover, this is my pattern, and that's not better than yours or worse, but it's the pattern that's there, and it's actually very refreshing to sometimes get angry.
Well, is there anything wrong with emotions?
No,
I guess not, unless they're
not.
unconsciously stuck.
Yeah.
Because then it starts to do damage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the damage is really, because I'm not, I was not hurting everyone all the time on the street, kicking ass, and everyone was kung fu. No, not like that at all. But you were hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And so the spirit who really wants to come through is just sort of hindered into this contraction, and also, it's sort of. Well, contraction, it's a complete stagnation, you could say.
And what's so beautiful, because I think that's very true, that it's not something that belongs to you. It belongs to your whole family. It's your surrounding that had that kind of energy.
Yeah.
Whereas with me, my whole surrounding had that kind of energy within it.
Yeah.
And the thing... And that was, for me, that was such an eye-opener when I went, maybe I told it before in some podcast, but I went out with my mom, my aunt, and some nieces.
Yeah.
Some cousins.
Yeah.
And we had done the photo shoot, and then my cousin, she said, "Wow, that's a great picture, and you actually." She was referring to the rimples, wrinkles. Yeah, on my face. I was like, okay,
thank you. Yeah.
But she said, and that's such an eye opener. She said, "You have the same wrinkles as everyone in our family," and we have a face reading book upstairs, which is a very nice thing to look at as well if you want to observe yourself.
Yeah.
And that opened my eyes, because we all have a lot of sadness. We all have carried a lot of sadness, especially
through the generations,
the females in my family.
Yeah.
You see in all of our faces the same wrinkles, and it's the wrinkles near the eyes which go a little bit down, and that's more the sadness.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's not mine. It's through generations that's been built up.
How wonderful is that, right?
Yeah. And I don't have to carry that. I do need to recognize it, but she gave me such an eye-opener. And I was like, I don't have to carry it. It's probably from things that happened with great grandmothers that's still in the air.
Yeah.
And I'm carrying it and I'm showing it.
Yeah.
My body tells me that it's there. So now that I can see it, now I need tools to let it go, to see where it is, and then I can let it go.
Yeah, for sure. I recognize it as well. I mean, anger in me is something that happens, but I am not an angry person.
No.
Right? I'm a sweet guy, I guess. I can say that now, right? If you're 48, you can say, I'm just actually a sweet guy, who doesn't want anything more than just share what I know and is curious about things and everything. But somewhere along the line, I had to start learning to protect myself. Yeah. And I guess that unconscious behavior, just like you said, it goes through generation and it's just picked up unconsciously. And until you wake up and you're like, and like you said, you come to this discovery, and this is huge. It's like, I behave that way, but is that who I really am?
Yeah. And
that's huge. So this is a beautiful talk, but we haven't shared any of how. So how do we deal with that yet?
Yeah.
So I would say that the next podcast we're doing is going to be a part 2, where we're going to talk about, okay, so now you have this introspection, you know yourself better, you understand yourself better. Now what?
Yeah.
So, and that's going to be fun. I think that's going to be the next one for next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
That's a great one. So we can see how do the hermetics deal with that? What are some of the things we can work with? How can we use the 5 elements? How can we, look at the lifestyle aspects? So how we take care of ourselves, things like that.
Absolutely.
And so I hope you found this, interesting. Yeah. And I look forward to next week. We're going to explore some of the, the methods we've learned so far to. Yeah.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Well, I love you too. Okay, everybody. So thanks for listening.
See you next week.
And bye-bye.
Bye.